The morning sun filtered through the dusty blinds of Westfield High School's main office, casting long shadows across the worn vinyl floor. Behind the front desk sat Olivia Chen, a woman in her early 40s who had mastered the art of blending into the background. For the past 8 years, she had been the administrative assistant at the school, the person who kept everything running without anyone really noticing. Olivia arrived at school each morning at precisely 7:15 a.m., a full 45 minutes before most of the teaching staff. She enjoyed these quiet moments, when the hallways were empty and the only sounds were the distant hum of the janitor's floor polisher and the occasional slam of a locker from early arriving students. During these peaceful minutes, she would prepare the day's announcements, sort through mail, and ensure the coffee was brewing in the teacher's lounge. Most people at Westfield High saw Olivia as nothing more than a fixture of the office, reliable, efficient, and utterly unremarkable. She wore simple clothes in neutral colors, kept her dark hair pulled back in a practical bun, and spoke in a soft voice that people sometimes had to lean in to hear. The teachers would smile politely when passing her desk, occasionally dropping off paperwork or asking for supplies, but few ever stopped for a real conversation. "Morning, Ms. Chen," Principal Rodriguez would say each day, collecting his messages without breaking stride on his way to his office. "Any fires to put out today?" "Nothing urgent, sir," was her usual reply, handed over with a neat stack of pink message slips and important mail. What no one at Westfield High realized was that Olivia Chen had once been someone quite different. 25 years ago, she had been a young woman with fire in her eyes and music in her soul. A young woman whose fingers could dance across piano keys with such passion and precision that her instructors had predicted a brilliant future for her. During her lunch breaks, when the office was covered by a student aide, Olivia would sometimes slip into the empty music room. She would stand in the doorway, gazing at the baby grand piano that sat in the corner, its polished surface gleaming under the fluorescent lights. On rare occasions, when she was absolutely certain no one would hear, she would sit on the bench, hover her fingers over the keys without touching them, and imagine the sound of Chopin's nocturnes filling the room. But she never played, not anymore. The truth about Olivia Chen lay buried beneath years of disappointment and compromise. Born to immigrant parents who ran a small grocery store, she had shown musical talent from an early age. By 16, she had won several regional competitions and earned a spot at a prestigious summer music program. Her parents had scraped together every penny they could to support her dream, working double shifts and cutting corners wherever possible. Then life intervened, as it often does, with cruel timing. Her father's sudden illness during her final year of music school had forced her to abandon her studies and return home. The medical bills piled up and the family store began to struggle. Olivia put her dreams aside, taking any job she could find to help keep the family afloat. Over time, the piano that had once been the center of her world became a painful reminder of what might have been. By the time she arrived at Westfield High, Olivia had constructed a quiet life for herself. Her parents had both passed away, the store had been sold, and she had moved to this small town looking for a fresh start. She rented a modest one-bedroom apartment, adopted an elderly cat from the local shelter, and took comfort in the predictability of her days. "Ms. Chen," "The copier's jammed again," called out Mr. Patel, the frazzled physics teacher who always seemed to be running late. "And I need 30 copies of this test in 5 minutes. "I'll take care of it," Olivia replied, rising from her desk with the practiced patience of someone who had fixed that particular copier hundreds of times before. As she expertly cleared the paper jam and ran Mr. Patel's copies, she overheard 2 teachers talking in the hallway outside. "So are you doing anything for the fundraiser this year?" asked Ms. Washington, the enthusiastic young English teacher who had started at Westfield the previous fall. "I don't know," replied Mr. Harrington, the music teacher whose booming voice carried easily through the thin walls. "Ticket sales are down from last year, and we're still short on performers. I was hoping to showcase some real talent this time instead of the usual karaoke and magic tricks." Olivia handed the stack of copies to Mr. Patel, who mumbled a quick thanks before rushing off to his waiting class. As she returned to her desk, she couldn't help thinking about the annual faculty talent show fundraiser. Every year, the teachers and staff would perform to raise money for the school's arts programs, which were perpetually underfunded. Every year, Olivia volunteered to handle ticket sales, program printing, and cleanup. tasks that kept her busy behind the scenes and safely away from the spotlight. The weeks leading up to the talent show were always chaotic. Teachers stopped by the office more frequently, dropping off music selections or asking for schedule adjustments. Olivia managed it all with quiet efficiency, maintaining the master spreadsheet that tracked who was performing what and when. "Hey, Liv," called out Coach Ramirez using the nickname that only he seemed to use. "Put me down for my usual spot. Gonna break out the guitar and do some Johnny Cash this year." Olivia nodded and made the note, suppressing a smile. Coach Ramirez performed the exact same 3 Johnny Cash songs every year, with varying degrees of success. The students always cheered wildly anyway, partly out of genuine appreciation for his enthusiasm, and partly because he was a popular teacher who graded their gym class participation. As the day of the talent show approached, the excitement in the school built steadily. Posters appeared in the hallways, student volunteers sold tickets during lunch periods, and rehearsals took place after school hours. Olivia stayed late many evenings making sure everything was organized and that the performers had what they needed. 3 days before the show, disaster struck. Mr. Harrington burst into the office, his face flushed and his normally neat hair standing on end. "We have a problem," he announced to no one in particular, though Olivia was the only person present. "Taylor can't play the piano for the show. Apparent food poisoning or something. Now I have no accompanist for half the musical numbers." Olivia looked up from her computer screen. "That's unfortunate. Do any of the other music students? They're all already performing," Mr. Harrington interrupted, pacing back and forth in front of her desk. "And I can't very well play for everyone myself when I'm supposed to be running the whole show." Olivia nodded sympathetically, already mentally reviewing the list of people who might be able to help. Perhaps one of the middle school music teachers, or maybe someone from the community college across town. Later that afternoon, she was setting up chairs in the auditorium when Mr. Harrington entered with Ms. Washington and Mr. Patel. They were deep in conversation, clearly still troubleshooting the pianist problem. Olivia continued with her task, arranging the chairs in neat rows and making sure each one had an unobstructed view of the stage. "What about her?" Ms. Washington suddenly said, pointing in Olivia's direction. Olivia froze, a chair still held in her hands. "Chen?" Mr. Harrington looked doubtful. "I don't think she—" "Have you ever played piano, Ms. Chen?" Ms. Washington asked, approaching with a friendly smile. Olivia carefully set down the chair. "I dabbled a bit. A long time ago," Mr. Patel snorted quietly. "Well, we need more than dabbling for Beethoven's Fifth," Mr. Harrington chuckled. "Though it would be funny to see you try. Maybe you could play chopsticks or something simple for the pre-show while people are being seated." The 3 teachers laughed, not unkindly but with the easy camaraderie of colleagues sharing a joke. Olivia felt her cheeks grow warm, but she managed a small smile in response. "Actually," she said, surprising herself with the words coming out of her mouth, "I could fill in if you really need someone." The teachers exchanged glances, clearly taken aback by her offer. "That's very kind," Mr. Harrington said, in the tone one might use when speaking to a well-meaning child. "But these are complex pieces that require years of training." "Let's not worry about it, I'll figure something out." Olivia nodded and returned to setting up chairs, her heart pounding in her chest. For the first time in decades, she had almost revealed her secret. Part of her felt relieved that the teachers hadn't taken her seriously, while another part, a part she thought had been silenced long ago, felt a flicker of indignation. As the teachers moved away, continuing their discussion about possible solutions, Olivia glanced toward the grand piano that sat on the stage. Its lid was propped open, ready for a performance that might not happen now. Her fingers tingled with a familiar sensation, a memory of how it felt to press down on those ivory keys and release the music that had once defined her very existence. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop hiding. The talent show was only 2 days away, and panic had settled over the music department at Westfield High. Mr. Harrington's usual calm demeanor had given way to frantic energy as he paced the hallways between classes, stopping teachers and musically inclined students to beg for their help. The loss of Taylor, their piano accompanist, had thrown the entire program into chaos. Olivia watched this unfold from her position behind the front desk, quietly continuing her work while the drama swirled around her. She had already printed the programs, now likely inaccurate, and sold nearly 200 tickets to parents, community members, and students. The show had become one of the school's most important fundraisers over the years, bringing in much-needed money for arts programs that faced budget cuts every spring. "We might have to cancel half the performances," Mr. Harrington muttered as he dropped a stack of revised performance schedules on Olivia's desk. Dark circles had formed under his eyes, and his normally neat tie hung loosely around his neck. "Can you make copies of these? It's the best solution I could come up with on short notice." Olivia nodded and took the papers. "What about the piano pieces?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the ringing phones. Mr. Harrington sighed heavily. "I'm going to have to play for some of them myself. Though how I'm supposed to conduct the show and play at the same time, I have no idea." "And the Bach piece that was supposed to open the second half? We're just cutting it entirely." As he walked away, Olivia looked down at the revised schedule. The piano pieces that remained had been simplified or reassigned to less demanding arrangements. The showcase piece, a beautiful Chopin nocturne that Taylor had been preparing all semester, was gone completely. Throughout the day, Olivia found her thoughts returning to the piano. During her lunch break, she slipped away from the office and made her way to the music room. Finding it empty, she stepped inside and closed the door behind her. The room smelled of wood polish and valve oil, a scent that immediately transported her back 25 years to her days in music school. The upright practice piano sat in the corner, less impressive than the grand piano on the auditorium stage, but still well-maintained. Olivia approached it slowly, as if it might vanish if she moved too quickly. She sat down on the bench, her heart pounding in her chest. For several long moments she simply stared at the keys, not touching them. Then, almost without conscious thought, she placed her hands in position and began to play. The first notes of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major filled the room. Her fingers were stiff at first, missing notes and fumbling transitions that had once been second nature. But as she continued, muscle memory began to take over. By the time she reached the middle section, her hands had remembered what her mind had tried to forget. Olivia closed her eyes, losing herself in the music for the first time in decades. She didn't hear the door open, didn't notice Ms. Washington standing in the doorway, mouth agape, watching the quiet administrative assistant transform before her eyes. When the final notes faded away, Olivia sat motionless, overwhelmed by emotions she had long suppressed. The sound of slow clapping brought her crashing back to reality. That was... Ms. Washington seemed at a loss for words. That wasn't dabbling. Olivia stood quickly, nearly knocking over the piano bench in her haste. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have... Are you kidding?" Ms. Washington stepped into the room, her eyes wide. "That was incredible. Why didn't you say something when we were talking about needing a pianist?" Olivia's cheeks burned. "It's been a very long time. I'm rusty." "Rusty?" Ms. Washington laughed in disbelief. "If that's rusty, I can't imagine what you sound like in top form. You have to tell Mr. Harrington. You could save the talent show." Panic rose in Olivia's throat. "No, I can't. I don't play anymore." "Not really? I was just remembering, that's all." Ms. Washington studied her face, seeming to sense the deeper story behind Olivia's reluctance. After a moment, she nodded. "Okay, I won't say anything if you don't want me to. But if you change your mind, a lot of students worked really hard on pieces that need piano accompaniment." With that, she left, closing the door gently behind her. Olivia sank back onto the piano bench, her hands shaking. 25 years of carefully constructed walls had begun to crumble, all because she couldn't resist the pull of those 88 keys. That evening, instead of going straight home after work, Olivia found herself driving to a small music store on the outskirts of town. The bell above the door jingled cheerfully as she entered, and an older man looked up from behind the counter. "Can I help you find something?" he asked. "Do you have sheet music for Chopin's nocturnes?" Olivia heard herself ask. The man smiled. "Classical fan, are you? Right over here." He led her to a section of sheet music and pulled out a book. Complete collection. "It's a bit pricey, but it's good quality." Olivia took the book, running her fingers over the cover. "I'll take it." For the first time in years, Olivia stayed up past her usual 10 p.m. bedtime. She had cleared off the small desk in her apartment and set up the sheet music, her fingers dancing over the surface as she practiced silently, not wanting to disturb her neighbors with her long, neglected electric keyboard that she dug out from the back of her closet. The muscle memory was returning more quickly than she had expected, though her technique was nowhere near what it had been in her youth. The fundamentals remained. By midnight, she had worked through 3 of the simpler nocturnes, making notes about fingering and dynamics. The next morning, Olivia arrived at school with dark circles under her eyes, but a strange energy coursing through her veins. She caught herself humming as she sorted the morning mail, something she never did. "Someone's in a good mood," remarked Principal Rodriguez as he collected his messages. "Beautiful day," Olivia replied with a small smile, surprising both the principal and herself. Throughout the morning, she kept an eye out for Mr. Harrington, both dreading and anticipating running into him. Around 11, she finally spotted him rushing past the office, looking even more frazzled than the day before. "Mr. Harrington," she called, her voice stronger than usual. "Do you have a moment?" He backtracked to her desk, checking his watch. "A very small one." "What's up?" Olivia took a deep breath. "About the talent show. I think I might be able to help with the piano accompaniment." Mr. Harrington blinked, then chuckled. "That's sweet of you, Ms. Chen, but we need someone with significant training. I know you offered yesterday, but—" "I studied piano at the Eastman School of Music," Olivia interrupted, the words tumbling out before she could reconsider. "I was there for 3.5 years before I had to leave." Mr. Harrington stared at her, his expression shifting from amusement to confusion. "Eastman? That's one of the top music schools in the country." "Yes," Olivia said simply. "But you said you just dabbled." Olivia looked down at her desk. It was a long time ago. Mr. Harrington seemed to be processing this new information, reevaluating the quiet woman he had worked alongside for years without really seeing. "Can you sight read?" "Yes." "Complex pieces? Bach, Chopin, Rachmaninoff?" "Yes," Olivia said again, feeling strangely lightheaded. Mr. Harrington rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "I'd need to hear you play before I could put you in the program. The show is tomorrow and there's no time for mistakes." Olivia nodded. "I understand. Meet me in the auditorium during lunch. Bring whatever you're comfortable playing." As Mr. Harrington walked away, Olivia felt a mixture of terror and exhilaration. What had she done? After decades of keeping her past safely buried, she had just excavated it in a moment of— what madness? Courage. The morning crawled by at an agonizing pace. Olivia found herself making careless errors, misspelling a teacher's name in an email, forgetting to transfer a call, stapling documents in the wrong order. By the time lunch period arrived, her stomach was in knots. She made her way to the auditorium, clutching her newly purchased book of Chopin's nocturnes. The large room was empty except for Mr. Harrington, who sat in the front row with a stack of music on the seat beside him. "Ah, Ms. Chen," he said, standing as she approached. "I was beginning to think you might have changed your mind." Olivia shook her head and made her way to the stage where the grand piano waited, its lid propped open. She set her music on the stand and adjusted the bench, aware of Mr. Harrington's eyes on her. "Whenever you're ready," he said, his tone professional but skeptical. Olivia placed her hands on the keys, took a deep breath and began to play the nocturne in E-flat major, the same piece she had practiced the night before. The acoustics in the auditorium were magnificent, the notes resonating through the empty space with a richness that her small keyboard at home couldn't produce. As she played, Olivia forgot about Mr. Harrington, forgot about the talent show, forgot about the 25 years of silence. There was only the music flowing from her fingers as if no time had passed at all. When she finished, the final note hung in the air for a long moment. Olivia kept her eyes on the keys, afraid to look up and see Mr. Harrington's reaction. "Ms. Chen," he said finally, his voice strangely subdued. "Olivia, why are you working in a school office?" She looked up then, meeting his gaze. "Life happens," she said simply. Mr. Harrington stood and walked to the edge of the stage. "Would you be willing to play for the talent show? Not just accompaniment, but a solo piece as well?" Olivia hesitated. "I don't know if I'm ready for a solo." "That performance suggests otherwise," Mr. Harrington said. "But no pressure. The accompaniment alone would be a tremendous help." Olivia thought about the students who had worked hard all semester, preparing pieces that now might not be performed. She thought about Ms. Washington's words from the day before, and she thought about the young woman she had once been with dreams as big as the sky. "I'll do it," she said quietly. "I'll play for the show." Mr. Harrington's face broke into a relieved smile. "Fantastic. Let me show you the pieces we need covered." As they went through the music together, Olivia felt a spark of something she hadn't experienced in years. Purpose, perhaps, or joy. Whatever it was, it made her feel more alive than she had in a very long time. News traveled fast through Westfield High School. By the end of the day, Olivia noticed teachers giving her curious glances as they passed the front office. A few even stopped to chat, something that rarely happened before. Ms. Washington had apparently shared what she'd witnessed in the music room, despite her promise not to tell anyone. "I heard you're saving the talent show," said Coach Ramirez, leaning against her desk during last period. "Harrington says you're some kind of piano prodigy." Olivia felt her cheeks grow warm. "Hardly a prodigy, just someone who used to play, that's all." Coach Ramirez grinned. "Well, I'm looking forward to seeing the office staff represented on stage for once. About time one of you showed up, the teachers." After the final bell rang and the hallways emptied of students, Mr. Harrington appeared with a folder full of sheet music. "These are all the accompaniment pieces," he said, placing the folder on Olivia's desk. "I've penciled in some notes about tempo and dynamics based on how the students have been practicing. Would you be able to stay late today for a rehearsal with a few of them?" Olivia nodded, though her stomach tightened with anxiety. It was one thing to play alone for Mr. Harrington, but quite another to perform with students who had been preparing all semester. "Great," Mr. Harrington said. "Auditorium at 4. "Oh, and have you decided what you'll play for your solo?" "Solo?" Olivia blinked. "I thought I was just doing accompaniment." "I added you to the program," Mr. Harrington said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Just a short piece between the choir and the staff band. 5 minutes maximum, something to show what you can really do." Before Olivia could protest, he was gone, hurrying down the hallway to his next crisis. She stared at the folder on her desk, her mind racing. A solo performance, in front of hundreds of people. After 25 years of not playing in public, the thought made her hands shake so badly that she had to stop typing an email mid-sentence. At 4 o'clock, Olivia made her way to the auditorium, the folder of music clutched tightly to her chest. She could hear voices inside, more than just a few students, from the sound of it. Taking a deep breath, she pushed open the door. About 20 people, a mix of students and teachers, were gathered near the stage. They all turned to look at her when she entered, and a hush fell over the group. "Ah, here she is," Mr. Harrington called out, waving her over. "Everyone, this is Ms. Chen, our administrative assistant, and as it turns out, our piano savior." There was a smattering of applause, which only made Olivia more uncomfortable. She managed a small smile and a nod as she made her way to the piano. "We'll start with the choir pieces," Mr. Harrington announced. "Ms. Chen, do you need time to look over the music first?" Olivia glanced at the first piece, a relatively simple arrangement of a popular song. "I think I can sight read this one." She positioned her hands over the keys and nodded to indicate she was ready. Mr. Harrington raised his baton, and the choir began to sing. Olivia joined in with the accompaniment, her fingers finding the keys with increasing confidence as the piece progressed. By the third song, she had relaxed enough to enjoy the experience. The choir sounded good, better than she had expected from a high school group, and Mr. Harrington was a skilled conductor. When they finished the final choir piece, several of the students applauded, looking at Olivia with newfound respect. "That was awesome, Ms. Chen," said a girl with bright purple hair. "We were so worried when Taylor got sick." "You sight read all of that?" asked another student, his eyes wide. "Without any practice?" Olivia smiled, genuinely this time. "The arrangements aren't too complicated. You all made it easy with your excellent singing." The rehearsal continued with solo performers, a violinist, a flutist, and a vocalist, all of whom needed piano accompaniment. Olivia worked with each of them, making notes on her music where their interpretations differed from what was written. By 6 o'clock, they had run through all the pieces at least once. Mr. Harrington dismissed the students, reminding them to arrive early the next day for a final sound check before the evening performance. "That was impressive sight reading," he said to Olivia after the others had gone, and the students seem much more confident now that they know they have solid accompaniment. "They're very talented," Olivia replied, gathering her music. "Have you decided on your solo piece yet?" Mr. Harrington asked. Olivia hesitated. "I was thinking perhaps Chopin's Nocturne in C-sharp minor. It's short but expressive." Mr. Harrington nodded approvingly. "Perfect. Not too technically demanding after so many years away from performing." but still challenging enough to showcase your abilities. As Olivia packed up to leave, he added, "You know, we've worked in the same school for 8 years, and I had no idea you were a musician. How did that never come up in conversation?" Olivia shrugged. It never seemed relevant to filing reports or answering phones. Still, Mr. Harrington said, it's quite something to discover that the person who's been ordering your sheet music for years is actually a trained pianist. Life takes us in unexpected directions sometimes, Olivia said quietly. On her drive home, Olivia found herself filled with a strange mixture of excitement and dread. The rehearsal had gone well, better than she had anticipated, and playing with the students had been genuinely enjoyable. But the thought of performing solo in front of an audience still terrified her. When she arrived at her apartment, she went straight to her keyboard, not even stopping to change out of her work clothes. She spent the next 3 hours practicing the nocturne in C-sharp minor, going over the difficult passages again and again until her fingers ached and her neighbors knocked on the wall to indicate it was getting late. That night, Olivia barely slept. Her mind kept replaying memories from her youth, her first recital at age 7, the regional competition she won at 16, her audition for Eastman. She remembered the pride in her parents' eyes when she was accepted to music school, and the heartbreak when she had to leave. She thought about all the years of silence, of keeping that part of herself locked away, hidden from everyone, including herself. Morning came too quickly. Olivia dressed with unusual care, choosing a dark blue dress that she normally saved for special occasions. She applied a light touch of makeup and even wore a pair of small pearl earrings that had belonged to her mother. The school day passed in a blur. Olivia went through her usual tasks mechanically, her mind elsewhere. Teachers and students stopped by the office more frequently than normal, some offering words of encouragement, others simply curious to see the administrative assistant, who was apparently a secret piano virtuoso. Nervous? Principal Rodriguez asked when he came to pick up his messages just before lunch. Terrified, Olivia admitted. He smiled kindly. I've been to every talent show since I started working here 15 years ago. Trust me when I say that the audience is incredibly supportive. They're there to have fun and to support the school, not to critique professional-level performances. His words were meant to be reassuring, but they only reminded Olivia that once, not so very long ago, she had been on track for professional-level performances. The final bell rang and the school emptied of students, only to fill again an hour later as parents and community members arrived for the talent show. Olivia remained in the office, reviewing her music one last time, before heading to the auditorium for sound check. The backstage area was chaotic, students in various costumes rushing about, teachers attempting to maintain order, stage crew checking microphones and lights. Mr. Harrington stood in the middle of it all, clipboard in hand, trying to organize the last-minute details. Miss Chen, he called when he spotted her. Perfect timing. We're running the sound check now. The piano is all set up. Just play a few measures so the tech crew can adjust the levels. Olivia made her way to the piano and sat down, acutely aware of the many eyes watching her. She played a brief section of the Chopin Nocturne, and a man with headphones gave her a thumbs up. Sounds great, he said. Nice piano work. The next hour was a whirlwind of activity as performers did last-minute rehearsals, and the auditorium filled with audience members. Olivia found a quiet corner backstage where she could focus and prepare mentally for the performance ahead. Ms. Washington found her there just before the show was set to begin. You look beautiful, she said, taking in Olivia's dress and careful appearance. Are you ready for your big reveal? Olivia managed a weak smile. As ready as I'll ever be, I suppose. The whole school is buzzing about you, Ms. Washington said. Everyone wants to hear the mysterious pianist from the front office. Before Olivia could respond, the lights flickered, the signal that the show was about to begin. Ms. Washington squeezed her hand encouragingly and hurried away to help with the first group of performers. From her position backstage, Olivia could hear Mr. Harrington welcoming the audience and explaining that the proceeds from the evening would go toward new instruments for the music program and art supplies for the visual arts classes. There was enthusiastic applause, followed by the first performance, the school choir, which would need her accompaniment. As Olivia made her way to the piano, she caught a glimpse of the audience through the curtains, The auditorium was packed, with every seat filled and people standing along the walls. Her heart pounded so loudly she was certain the front row must be able to hear it. The choir filed onto the risers behind her, and Mr. Harrington took his position as conductor. He caught Olivia's eye and smiled reassuringly. "Ready?" he mouthed. Olivia nodded, though she wasn't sure if she was ready at all. She placed her hands on the keys, took a deep breath, and waited for Mr. Harrington's cue. When it came, she began to play, her fingers finding the notes automatically despite her racing thoughts. The choir joined in, their young voices blending in harmony. As the music surrounded her, Olivia felt her anxiety begin to fade, replaced by the familiar focus that came with performance. By the third song, she had settled into a rhythm, accompanying the choir with growing confidence. When they finished their set, there was enthusiastic applause, and several choir members smiled at her as they left the stage. The rest of the first half went smoothly. Olivia accompanied the violinist, the flutist, and the vocalist, each performance flowing into the next. Before she knew it, intermission had arrived, giving her a brief respite before her solo in the second half. Backstage was crowded during the break, with performers discussing the first half and preparing for the second. Several people approached Olivia to compliment her playing. "You're amazing, Ms. Chen," said the violinist, a shy sophomore who had performed a challenging Vivaldi piece. "I've never had such good accompaniment before." "You made me sound better," added the vocalist, a senior who had sung an operatic aria. "Usually I have to adjust to the piano, but you were right with me the whole time." Their words warmed Olivia's heart, but also increased the pressure she felt for her upcoming solo. These students, who had only known her as the quiet woman in the front office, now had expectations of her as a musician. All too soon, intermission ended, and the second half of the show began. Olivia's solo was scheduled after the choir's second set of songs. As she accompanied them once more, she could feel the moment of truth approaching rapidly. When the choir finished and took their bows, Mr. Harrington stepped to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, our next performer is someone you might know better from the front office than the concert stage. For 8 years, she has been the administrative backbone of our school, managing everything from attendance reports to supply orders. What none of us knew until very recently is that she is also an extraordinarily gifted pianist." Olivia's mouth went dry as Mr. Harrington continued. She studied at one of the nation's top music conservatories before life took her in a different direction. Tonight, she has graciously agreed to share her talent with us. Please welcome to the stage Ms. Olivia Chen, performing Chopin's Nocturne in C-sharp minor. The audience applauded as Olivia walked to center stage. Under the bright lights, she couldn't see individual faces, just a sea of shadowy figures. She sat down at the piano, adjusted the bench, and placed her hands on the keys. For a moment, she froze, overwhelmed by the situation. 25 years since her last public performance. 25 years of silence. What if she failed? What if she embarrassed herself in front of the entire school community? Then, almost without conscious decision, she began to play. The first notes of Chopin's Nocturne in C-sharp minor filled the auditorium, tentative and soft. Olivia's fingers trembled slightly as they pressed down on the keys, her body remembering the piece even as her mind raced with doubt. The melody began simply enough, a delicate, mournful line that floated above a gentle accompaniment in the left hand. As she reached the end of the first phrase, something shifted inside her. The music began to flow more naturally, her hands moving with increasing confidence across the keyboard. Each note connected to the next as if being pulled by an invisible thread, weaving together to create something greater than the sum of its parts. The piece grew in intensity, building toward its emotional peak. Olivia leaned into the piano, her body swaying slightly with the music. She had chosen this particular nocturne because it spoke to her, its melancholy beauty reflecting her own journey of loss and rediscovery. As she played, she thought of her parents and how proud they would have been to see her performing again. She thought of all the years spent in silence, her talent hidden away like a precious object too fragile to be touched. When she reached the most technically challenging section, a series of intricate ornamentations that decorated the melody like delicate lacework, her fingers moved with a precision that surprised even her. Muscle memory, combined with the hours of recent practice, carried her through what had once been her greatest struggle with the piece. The final section returned to the haunting simplicity of the opening, but now transformed by everything that had come before. As Olivia played the last chord, letting it ring out before slowly lifting her hands from the keys, she realized that the auditorium had fallen completely silent. Not a cough, not a whisper, not a rustle of programs disturbed the moment. For a brief, terrifying second, she wondered if her performance had been a disaster, if the audience was sitting in uncomfortable silence, unsure how to respond to the administrative assistant who had overreached her abilities. Then the applause began. It started slowly, a few claps here and there, and then swelled rapidly into thunderous applause that filled the auditorium. Olivia rose from the bench, her legs unsteady beneath her, and turned to face the audience. The bright stage lights prevented her from seeing individual faces clearly, but she could make out the dark shapes of people rising to their feet. A standing ovation. She stood frozen for a moment, overwhelmed by the response. This wasn't polite applause for a brave attempt. This was genuine appreciation for a moving performance. Tears pricked at her eyes as she bowed, first to the audience and then, turning slightly, to acknowledge Mr. Harrington, who stood in the wings, his own applause enthusiastic and his face split with a wide grin. As Olivia made her way off stage, the applause continued. Behind the curtain, several students and teachers waited to congratulate her. "That was incredible," whispered the purple-haired choir girl, her eyes wide with admiration. "Like professional level incredible." Coach Ramirez gave her a thumbs up. "Guess I need to step up my Johnny Cash game now that the bar's been raised." Ms. Washington hugged her impulsively. "I knew you were good from what I heard in the practice room, but that was something else entirely." Olivia thanked them all, still dazed by what had just happened. The rest of the show continued around her. Coach Ramirez performed his Johnny Cash songs, the staff band played a rock medley, and the drama teacher delivered a comedic monologue. But Olivia barely registered any of it. She sat in a folding chair backstage, her hands still tingling from the piano keys, her mind replaying the moment when the audience had risen to their feet. When the final act concluded, and Mr. Harrington returned to the microphone to thank everyone for coming, Olivia slipped out from backstage and made her way to the back of the auditorium. She hoped to leave quietly before the crowds dispersed, suddenly shy about facing people after her unexpected moment in the spotlight. She had nearly reached the exit when a hand touched her arm. She turned to find Principal Rodriguez standing there, along with an elderly man Olivia didn't recognize. "Ms. Chen," Principal Rodriguez said, "before you disappear, I wanted to introduce you to someone. This is Dr. Whitman, the retired head of the music department at the community college and a major supporter of our arts programs." The elderly man extended his hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Ms. Chen. Your performance was exceptional." Olivia shook his hand, murmuring a thank you. "Dr. Whitman has a proposition for you," Principal Rodriguez continued, "which I think you'll find interesting." Dr. Whitman's eyes twinkled behind wire-rimmed glasses. "I run a small music program for adults in the community, people who played in their youth but gave it up for various reasons. Career, family, life's complications. We meet once a week at the college, and we're in desperate need of a qualified instructor." Olivia blinked, caught off guard by the unexpected offer. I'm not sure I'm qualified to teach. It's been so long." "Nonsense," Dr. Whitman interrupted gently. "You have formal training from one of the best schools in the country, and more importantly, you understand what it means to return to music after a long absence. That's exactly what my students need, someone who can guide them back to the joy of playing without judgment." Before Olivia could respond, the auditorium doors burst open, and people began streaming out. Several paused when they saw her, coming over to offer congratulations or express surprise at her hidden talent. "Think about it," Dr. Whitman said, pressing a business card into her hand. "No pressure. Just an opportunity if you're interested." As he and Principal Rodriguez moved away, Olivia found herself surrounded by parents, students, and teachers, all wanting to speak with her. The shy administrative assistant who had spent years blending into the background was suddenly the center of attention. "I had no idea you could play like that. Have you ever performed professionally? Do you give private lessons? Where did you study?" The questions came rapid fire, leaving Olivia little chance to respond. She answered as best she could, still processing the events of the evening herself. Eventually, the crowd thinned, and Olivia was able to make her way to the parking lot. The cool night air felt good on her flushed face. She stood beside her car for a moment, looking back at the school building where light still spilled from the auditorium windows. Students and parents continued to exit in small groups, their voices carrying across the quiet parking lot. Ms. Chen. She turned to see Mr. Harrington jogging toward her, a folder in his hand. "You forgot your music," he said, holding out the folder, "and I wanted to catch you before you left. That performance, it was stunning." Olivia took the folder, her fingers brushing against his. "Thank you, and thank you for pushing me to do it. I wouldn't have had the courage otherwise." Mr. Harrington shook his head. "I didn't push you. I just opened a door. You walked through it all on your own." He hesitated, then added, "Would you consider playing for us again? The spring concert, perhaps, or even something more regular?" The question caught her off guard. "More regular?" "Our piano lab instructor is retiring at the end of this year," Mr. Harrington explained. "It's only a part-time position, but with your background, you'd be perfect for it. You could keep your administrative job and teach a couple of piano classes each day. Principal Rodriguez and I discussed it after hearing you play at the rehearsal yesterday." Olivia stared at him, speechless. A teaching position. The thought had never crossed her mind. Yet now that he mentioned it, something stirred inside her, a spark of excitement at the possibility of sharing her knowledge and passion with young musicians. "I don't have any teaching experience," she said finally. Mr. Harrington smiled. "Neither did I when I started. What you do have is talent, training, and, based on what I saw tonight, the ability to move people with your playing. That's more valuable than a teaching certificate, which you can earn over time if you're interested." He glanced back at the school. "I should get back to help with cleanup. Just think about it, okay? No pressure, but I think you'd be amazing." As Mr. Harrington walked away, Olivia unlocked her car and sat behind the wheel, not yet starting the engine. She placed her hands on the steering wheel, noticing how they still trembled slightly from the adrenaline of performance. These same hands that had spent years typing memos and filing paperwork had tonight reminded her of who she once was, who she perhaps still was, beneath the quiet exterior she had constructed. She thought about Dr. Whitman's offer to teach adult students and Mr. Harrington's suggestion of taking on piano classes at the school. Two opportunities that had not existed this morning. Two doors that had suddenly opened because she had found the courage to sit down at a piano and play. The drive home was a blur, Olivia's mind too full of the evening's events to notice the familiar streets and buildings she passed every day. When she arrived at her apartment, she was surprised to find her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patel, waiting by her door. "I heard your performance was tonight," Mrs. Patel said. "How did it go?" Olivia had mentioned the talent show in passing a few days earlier, when apologizing for practicing late into the evening. She hadn't expected her neighbor to remember. "It went well," Olivia replied, understating the evening's success in her typical fashion. Mrs. Patel smiled knowingly. "Just well? From the look on your face, I'd guess it was more than that." Olivia couldn't help but return the smile. "It was incredible, actually. Better than I ever expected." "I'm not surprised," Mrs. Patel said. "I've been listening to you practice through these thin walls for the past few days. You're very talented." "Thank you," Olivia said, touched by her neighbor's kindness. "I'm sorry if the music disturbed you." Mrs. Patel waved away the apology. "Not at all. It was beautiful to hear. My late husband played violin, you know. I've missed having music in the building." As Mrs. Patel returned to her apartment, Olivia entered her own, closing the door behind her. Her small electric keyboard sat on the desk where she had left it that morning. Sheet music spread across the surface. She set down her purse and the folder of music from the talent show, then stood looking at the keyboard for a long moment. 25 years of silence. 25 years of denying that part of herself, and in the space of just a few days, everything had changed. Olivia sat down at the keyboard and turned it on, adjusting the volume to be considerate of the late hour. She began to play, not Chopin this time, but Bach, a piece she had loved in her student days but hadn't attempted since returning to the piano. Her fingers stumbled over the complex counterpoint at first, but she continued, working through the difficult passages with patient determination. Tomorrow, she would call Dr. Whitman about the adult music program. She would speak to Principal Rodriguez about the piano lab position. She would begin the process of reclaiming not just her music, but parts of herself that had been dormant for too long. For tonight, though, she simply played, letting the music wash over her like an old friend, finally welcomed home. 1 year later, Olivia stood in the hallway outside the piano lab, listening to the sounds of students practicing. Each sat at their own digital keyboard with headphones, but she could hear the occasional note or chord as someone adjusted their volume or removed their headphones to ask a question. Through the window in the door, she could see 20 students bent over their keyboards, some frowning in concentration, others smiling as they mastered a difficult passage. So much had changed in the 12 months since the talent show that had transformed her life. She had kept her position as administrative assistant, but now spent her afternoons teaching piano classes. The arrangement had been Principal Rodriguez's idea, allowing her to maintain her stable income and benefits while transitioning into teaching. At first, Olivia had worried that her lack of formal teaching credentials would be an issue, but the school board had granted her an emergency certification based on her conservatory background and performance skills, with the understanding that she would complete education courses over the next few years. The piano lab, once an afterthought in the music program with dwindling enrollment, had become one of the most popular electives at Westfield High. The waiting list for Olivia's classes stretched into the next school year. Students who had never shown interest in music were suddenly signing up, curious about the quiet office worker who had stunned the school with her hidden talent. Olivia checked her watch. 5 minutes until the end of the current period. She used the time to organize sheet music for her next class, advanced students who were preparing for the spring recital. This year, instead of a talent show, the music department was hosting a formal concert featuring both student and faculty performances. Olivia would be playing Rachmaninoff's Prelude in G minor, a piece that would have terrified her a year ago, but now felt like an exciting challenge. The bell rang, and students began filing out of the piano lab, many stopping to speak with her on their way. "Ms. Chen, I finally got that section we talked about yesterday. I practiced for 2 hours last night. Can I show you after school?"
My mom got tickets for the symphony this weekend. I'm so excited.
Olivia answered each student with genuine interest, still sometimes surprised by her new role in their lives. For years, these same teenagers had passed her desk without a second glance. Now they sought her advice, shared their musical discoveries, and occasionally even confided personal problems, seeing her as more than just another adult at school. As her advanced students filed in for the next class, Olivia noticed Mr. Harrington slip into the back of the room. He often stopped by to observe her teaching, initially as a mentor, but increasingly as a colleague seeking fresh ideas for his own classes. "Good afternoon, everyone," Olivia said, moving to the front of the room. "Before we start working on your recital pieces, I have a special announcement." The students looked up expectantly. "As you know, we've been fundraising all year for new equipment," she continued. "I'm happy to tell you that we've reached our goal. Next month, the piano lab will be getting 12 new keyboards with weighted keys and improved sound quality." There were cheers and high fives around the room. The fundraising effort had been a group project, with students organizing small performances throughout the community to raise money. Olivia had contributed as well, playing at a charity event at the community college where she now taught adult classes 2 evenings a week through Dr. Whitman's program. "Now, let's get to work," she said, moving around the room as students began practicing their assigned pieces. She stopped at each station, offering guidance and encouragement, sometimes demonstrating a technique or suggesting a different approach to a troublesome passage. When she reached the back of the room, Mr. Harrington leaned over to speak quietly. The music department meeting got moved to tomorrow afternoon. "Can you still make it?" Olivia nodded. "I've been working on that proposal you suggested, expanding the piano program to include a chamber music option." "Excellent," Mr. Harrington said. "I think the administration will go for it, especially given how successful your classes have been." As he left, Olivia felt a flutter of pride. A year ago, she had been ordering supplies and answering phones. Now she was helping to shape the future of the school's music program. The rest of the school day passed quickly, filled with teaching, practice, and preparation for the upcoming recital. When the final bell rang, Olivia gathered her things and headed to her car. She had just enough time to go home, change, and eat something before her evening class at the community college. Her apartment looked different now. The small desk that had once held bills and paperwork was gone, replaced by a proper digital piano, a splurge she had allowed herself after receiving her first teaching stipend. Sheet music filled a new bookshelf, organized by composer. On the walls where there had once been generic prints from a department store, now hung framed music-themed artwork and a photograph from the talent show that had changed everything. Even her elderly cat seemed happier, curled up on a cushion near the piano where he could listen to her practice. Olivia scratched him behind the ears as she passed, receiving a contented purr in response. She changed into more comfortable clothes, heated up some leftover soup, and ate quickly while reviewing her notes for the evening class. The adult students brought different challenges than her high schoolers. More self-consciousness, more deeply ingrained bad habits, but also more life experience and often more dedication. Many of them, like Olivia herself, were rediscovering a passion that life had interrupted. The community college was just a 15-minute drive from her apartment. As Olivia pulled into the parking lot, she recognized the cars of her regular students already there, early as usual. They were a dedicated group, a retired accountant finally pursuing the musical education he had abandoned for a practical career, a young mother who played when her children were at school, a postal worker who had played in a band in his youth and was now learning classical technique for the first time. The classroom was arranged in a circle, with digital pianos facing inward so the students could see each other. It created a sense of community that was different from the rows of keyboards in the high school lab. As Olivia entered, several students looked up and waved. "I brought those Bach pieces we talked about last week," said the postal worker, holding up a book of sheet music. "Found them at that shop you recommended." "My granddaughter recorded my practice session," said the retired accountant. "I was horrified at first, but it really helped me hear what you've been trying to tell me about my tempo." Olivia smiled, setting her bag down near the teacher's piano. "That's exactly why I suggest recording yourselves. Our ears deceive us when we're playing." As the class began, Olivia felt the familiar sense of rightness that had been growing over the past year. This was where she belonged, not hiding her talent but sharing it. Teaching had never been her plan, but it had become her calling, a way to reconnect with music that was even more satisfying than she could have imagined. The 2-hour class passed quickly, with individual coaching followed by a group discussion about performance anxiety, something Olivia could speak about from very personal experience. As the students packed up their materials, several lingered to ask questions or share their progress on personal projects. The retired accountant was the last to leave. "I wanted to thank you," he said, his voice gruff with emotion. "My wife says I'm a different person since I started these classes. Happier, more alive." Olivia understood exactly what he meant. "Music has that power," she said simply. "It's never too late to embrace it." After locking up the classroom, Olivia drove home through the quiet streets, her mind already turning to tomorrow's tasks, the department meeting, her afternoon classes, the evening practice session for her own recital piece. Her phone rang just as she was parking, and she answered to hear Dr. Whitman's voice. "Olivia, I'm glad I caught you. I've been meaning to ask, would you be interested in giving a solo recital at the college next fall? Nothing too ambitious, perhaps an hour program. The music department has a small budget for guest artists." The question took her by surprise. "A full recital? I don't know if I'm ready for that." "You're more than ready," Dr. Whitman said firmly. "Your playing at the charity event was remarkable. People have been asking when they can hear you again." After they hung up, Olivia sat in her car for a moment, considering the offer. A year ago, the thought of performing a full solo recital would have sent her into a panic. Now, though there were still butterflies at the idea, she felt something else too: excitement, anticipation, a desire to share the music she loved with an audience. Inside her apartment, Olivia went straight to the piano. It was late, but Mrs. Patel next door had made it clear that she enjoyed hearing Olivia play at any hour. "Music is never a disturbance," she had insisted. "It's a gift to these old ears." Olivia opened her music to the Rachmaninoff she was preparing for the school recital and began to play. Her fingers moved confidently over the keys, finding the rich harmonies and complex rhythms of the piece. As she played, she thought about how far she had come in just 1 year, from hiding her talent to embracing it fully, from isolation to connection, from silence to music. The journey wasn't always easy. There were still moments of doubt, days when the weight of her abandoned dreams pressed heavily on her shoulders. Teaching brought its own challenges. Difficult students, administrative hurdles, the constant balancing act between her office duties and her classes. Yet every time she sat down at the piano, whether alone in her apartment or in front of an audience, she knew she had made the right choice in stepping back into the musical world. The talent show had been more than just a performance. It had been a homecoming. As she reached the powerful, dramatic ending of the Rachmaninoff piece, Olivia poured all of her emotion into the music, her gratitude for second chances, her joy in rediscovery, her hope for the future. The final chords resonated through her small apartment, lingering in the air like a promise. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities. Students to teach, music to learn, perhaps even a solo recital to prepare for. But tonight, in this moment, Olivia Chen, administrative assistant, piano teacher, musician, was exactly where she was meant to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do. The joke that had led her to the piano that day a year ago had become the catalyst for reclaiming her true self. The teachers who had laughed at the idea of the quiet office worker performing had become her colleagues and supporters. And the woman who had spent decades hiding her gift was now sharing it with the world. One student, one performance, one note at a time. Olivia closed the piano gently and smiled. The music had always been there, waiting patiently inside her. All she had needed was the courage to let it out.